And we're live on the Stables Network.
Welcome to a special edition of ATL Prime Sports, brought to you by the Association of Professional Ball Players of America. I'm Todd Corder, bringing you back in Major League history as we have former Major League pitcher Jim Abbott with us, who pitched for the California Angels, the New York Yankees, the Chicago White Sox, and Milwaukee Brewers. Jim will be on shortly. The show, he's had a lot of accolades in his career. He was a standout in high school and football and baseball at Flint Central High School in Flint, Michigan, which is my hometown. Played baseball at the University of Michigan with an all-star infield of Sabo, Larkin, and Hal Morris, who all played the infield for the Cincinnati Reds in their 1990 World Championship season under Lou Piniella. Jim was drafted in the first round by the California Angels. He didn't even play one day in the major leagues. He went right to the big leagues and made his debut. He was one of three pitchers to win his debut in the 1980s. It was just a tremendous career. Jim was born without a right hand. He was a gold medal winning pitcher in 1988. Like I said, he was a first round draft pick in 1989. Like I said, he never played a game in the minors. Think about that last statement. That's why I said it twice. He never played one game in the minors. And immediately, he was brought up by the California Angels. In 1987, he won the James E. Sullivan Award as the top amateur athlete in the country. He was the first baseball player to do so. And now we welcome in Jim Abbott, former Major League pitcher. Jim, welcome to ATL Prime Sports. Glad to have you on. Hello, Jim. Hello, Jim. Seem to have a connection issue here. Let's see. Hello, Jim. You on with me? Hello. Seem to have some technical difficulties here. We'll wait to bring Jim Abbott back on. You know, in his 10-year career, he had 24 plate appearances, all in his final season, and all of them with the Milwaukee Brewers. He had 2 hits and 24 plate appearances. The 2 hits were against the Chicago Cubs, and each of them were off John Lieber, a very good left-handed Major League Baseball pitcher. Drove in 3 runs. So he was a very good hitter in high school, and we'll see if we can bring Jim back on here. Jim, welcome to ATL Prime Sports. Seem to have some technical difficulties here. Jim, you with us? Brett, can you hear me there in San Francisco?
Yeah,
Brett,
he called in. We're having a little technical difficulty. Hopefully he'll call right back.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Breck. I appreciate that.
Hello, this call is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please hang up now. The recording has stopped.
On the other line. I mean, there are other accolades in his career. I really didn't want to give them all away before the interview. Hello, is Jim in?
This is him.
Hey, Jim, sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties. Welcome to ATL Prime Sports. I appreciate your patience today.
No problem at all. No problem. I'm happy to join you.
Yes, each of us are Flint Michigan natives. He went to rival high schools and all, and I was giving the audience a little bit of your timeline before I brought you on. I didn't want to give away the whole thing here. So.
Well, I appreciate that. looking forward to talking to you and our shared past friendships and friends back home.
Yes. You know what? Before we get started on your career, Jim, sadly, Al Kaline, Mr. Tiger, he passed away. Being from Flint, Michigan, what did he mean to you growing up?
Well, Al Kaline is one of those revered figures in the state of Michigan. Even though I was just young enough to not see him, not really see him play all that much. He still was a broadcaster with the Tigers, and everybody knew him as such a great and graceful player and a gracious man. And one of the cool things that happened to me growing up, I was in Little League, and Al Kaline sent me an autographed bat and a handwritten note wishing me good luck, and said he'd heard a little bit about my playing and wanted me to know that he was rooting for me. So I still have that bat to this day. I tweeted about it the other day, and a lot of people responded, especially back home. So that was cool. He was just a guy who seemed to live his life in the right way, had his priorities in order. He moved to Detroit and stayed there his entire life. And, he's just an absolute hero in Michigan, and he'll be sadly missed.
67 years with one organization as a player, as you mentioned, a broadcaster, and a front office executive. 67 years. It'll never be done again, will it?
I don't know how long Cal Ripken will be with the Baltimore Orioles. I'm sure
that's true. That's a good one.
He's doing something. I don't know if he has official capacity with the Orioles, but no, Al Kaline was just. We were very lucky growing up in Michigan, and this is going to go back a ways, but we had an unbelievable broadcast team. There obviously wasn't as many games broadcast as there are nowadays, but every night we got a chance to listen to one of the great radio broadcasters of all time, and Ernie Harwell.
Correct.
And, on the weekends, you'd have George Kell and Al Kaline as a broadcasting team. And I would argue that, those guys were about as good as anybody around in those days. And I think they made a lot of Tigers fans back just with their broadcasting. I think, they had a huge following, a huge fan base.
No question about it. Growing up in Flint, Michigan, each of us did. What was it like for you?
Flint, Michigan is a tough town, as you know, and a lot of people know. There's certain places in Flint that you had to be very careful. A lot of places that you didn't really want to wander into for a lot of different economic reasons, but it was a good place to grow up. I have to say that. It was, it was a blue collar town. We lived in great neighborhoods with great families, and there were a ton of sports, and at all the different high schools in Flint and around Flint. So there's just an amazing variety of sports to play and great athletes who were playing it, and I used that. I felt a little bit different when I was growing up. I didn't know much about anything of my path, but I did know that I loved sports. I loved competing, and the great athletes in Flint were my heroes, and I wanted to be like them.
When did you get an interest in playing baseball, and how did you learn how to play baseball, being born without a right hand, and you also played football? We'll get to that too. How did you play sports? How did you do it?
Well, it was a process. I had to learn to do things differently, and I had to learn to throw and catch with my left hand, and that's a process that started with my dad in the front yard. And it didn't start perfectly. It took time. I had to work at it, and I had to be a little creative, and I try to imitate the best I could the way my friends did it, but sometimes I had to go in a completely different direction. So, the learning curve was pretty steep at times, but I had a lot of great people, and that's just the truth of the matter. A lot of people have assigned these flowery terms to my career. The truth of the matter is I had some fantastic coaches, whether it was in Flint or University of Michigan, the Olympics, in Major League Baseball. People who truly believed in me, sometimes more than I believed in myself. And they were there. They were there to help me learn how to take a snap as a quarterback, or hold a baseball bat, or switch the glove on and off. It was that encouragement and that support that made all the difference in my life.
Here with Jim Abbott on ATL Prime Sports, former Major League Baseball pitcher. Jim, you ended up playing high school baseball and football at Flint Central, which was my rival at the time. You were an all-state athlete. How fun was it? I mean, it must have been an absolute blast. You played quarterback in high school, and you took the team to the state finals. Tell me all about that.
Well, you have a good memory there, Todd. I was just kind of it was an odd thing. Our coach was a really legendary coach in the Flint area, a guy named Joe Ufinger.
Yes.
And my baseball coach was the defensive coordinator, Bob Hollick. And I'd never played football before, but they basically called me one day and told me to get down there. I was going to be playing some football. And it was great. I got on the field. I had to learn how to take the snap. We had an established, very good team. A lot of good skill position players and a good defense. And my senior year, we ended up making a real good run through the season. And unfortunately, at the end of the season, our starting quarterback had some tough times in the classroom, became academically ineligible. And so I was thrust into the starting role right there at the end of the year. And so we had to win one more game against Flint Northern and go to the state playoffs. And it was just an incredibly exciting time. So I loved baseball. My path was baseball. I knew I was going to go play college baseball in Michigan. But there was nothing like football. The intensity of it, the locker room spirit, just the passion that you had to experience, playing on Friday nights, and the cheerleaders and the band and the packed stadium down there at Atwood Stadium in Flint. It was really something to be a part of. I'm so thankful to have had that opportunity.
You're listening here to Jim Abbott on ATL Prime Sports, former Major League Baseball pitcher. Let's transition to your career at the University of Michigan. And what a career it was. I mean, you not only helped the Wolverines become a Big Ten contender, but a contender nationally. Of course, the Wolverines last year went to the national championship game against Vanderbilt and took them right to the very end and fell just short. But before that, the last time they were that big of a contender is when you were there. Tell us about yourself, how you played at Michigan, and the great ball players that played with you along with the coaching staff.
That's right. I was so proud of the team this past year. They went to the Omaha College World Series, played against, they beat UCLA out here in a super regional, just incredible upset. UCLA was number 1 or number 2 in the country. And then they went on to the World Series and made their way through some tough teams. And then, gave Vanderbilt all they wanted in that 3-game series and took them to the final game of the year. So it was a magical run. And I can't tell you, I'm so proud to have gone to the University of Michigan and played baseball there. It really was the springboard for me. I don't think that I would have probably been able to go on and do the things that I did in baseball had I not played at Michigan, had not played on some very good teams in the Big Ten. And then, that exposure and that experience allowed me the opportunity to try out for the USA teams and get a chance to play in the Pan American Games my sophomore year. And then I played in the Olympics. It was amazing, just incredible. I love amateur baseball. I really do. As proud as I am of my major league career, I just really am proud of amateur baseball and going to the University of Michigan and playing there and doing well. And you know, it has remained an incredible affiliation in my life.
You played with some great players on that club. If I can recall, if this is accurate in the timing, did you play with Chris Sabo, Barry Larkin, and Hal Morris, who all played on the 1990 World Series Reds team managed by Lou Piniella? Or were you slightly before them? I thought you were right on time with them.
You know, you have a great memory. I benefited from the program they created because I came just after. Sabo and Barry Larkin. My freshman year, Barry Larkin would have been a senior, but of course he was drafted by the Reds and went on to his pro career. But Hal Morris was there. Casey Close was there. Was a great player and now a big time agent in MLB. You know, we had Scott Kamenicki played in the big leagues. Mike Ignashik. We had a good program. Very talented. A lot of the best players from Michigan and Ohio were coming to Michigan at that point. And yeah, we were able to compete. We were a northern school. We won a couple Big Ten championships and unfortunately lost in some bitterly tough losses in the regional. But it was a heck of a college experience.
Well, after that, like you said, you played. This is incredible. You know, you took the United States, and this has got to be one of your top achievements, to the gold medal. In 1988, you were the winning pitcher. What was that like?
You know, it was incredible. I was so fortunate. Things were going so fast at that point in my life. It was, as proud a baseball moment as I had was playing on the USA team. It was just what I loved about that team. It was an amateur team. There were no professionals on that team.
Right.
It was really the best college baseball we could put together at the time. And we were going up against Cuba and Japan and, older players who had more international experience. And a lot of times we were the underdog walking on those fields. And we had a tremendous coach from Stanford, Mark Marcus. Skip Bertman from LSU was there. We had Ben McDonald from LSU and Robin Ventura from Oklahoma State, Tino Martinez from the University of Tampa, and on and on. We just, but guys on that team were so unselfish and so willing to do whatever it took for that team to win. They didn't care. You could be a All-American pitcher at your school, back at your conference, and those guys were willing to go to the bullpen and take a role out there. So that's the kind of spirit we played with. We loved each other. We were coming into our own as baseball players, and to win a gold medal with those guys, I tell you, I cherish that. To celebrate with those guys that gold medal, we beat Japan 5-3. That big jam pile in the middle of the field there in Seoul, Korea, and standing on top of the podium with a gold medal and sharing it. I don't know what it'd be like to win an individual gold medal. Probably incredible, but there was something very special about 25 of us getting a gold medal and taking it home to our respective hometowns and our respective colleges.
You also carried the United States flag during the opening ceremonies at the 1987 Pan American Games in Indianapolis, Indiana. You also were the first American pitcher to defeat Cuba in 25 years. What was that like?
It was amazing. We were the first team to go down there and play, and it was a hyped up event. It really was something because, tensions were still running high between Cuba and the United States. Opening day, we played in this enormous stadium in downtown Havana. 50,000 people showed up. Fidel Castro showed up. There was music playing in the stands and bongos and security guards and military people with Uzis, and it was really, really something. You can go anywhere in the world, and I promise you, nobody loves baseball as much as the Cuban people, and especially on their home country. So, yeah, we played a 5-game series. We lost the first 2 games, and then I was the starting pitcher the third day, and pitched pretty good ball game. Pitched well, and we scored some runs and beat Cuba, and it was amazing. You know, it was really cool, Todd. To be that far away from home in such a different culture, and to go up against the Cubans were thought of as the best amateur team in the world. So to do that was really, really cool, and I was so happy. And I knew, I was embraced by the Cuban people to a degree that's hard to explain. And I always wondered about that. And the first couple games when I would just go out in the outfield and play catch, there was, this excitement and this anticipation and this curiosity. And I was told by some people in Cuba that the idea of a player my age growing up with one hand, that opportunity may not exist in Cuba. That wasn't the way that they looked at things. And for a player with one hand to play on the national team wasn't something that they truly comprehended. And so I'm thankful, winning that game and coming back in the United States and carrying the flag. I'm thankful for that. It does bring me back to the tremendous optimism and support that I had in Flint, Michigan.
Well, you made the College Baseball Hall of Fame in 2007. And for the audience, your record at Michigan was 26-8 with a 3.03 ERA in 3 years in Ann Arbor. Wow, is all I got to say, which brings me to now your major league career. You were the first round pick in the 1989 draft. I think you were the 7th or 8th pick overall. You never played a game in the minors. That just, I interviewed Jake Wood, and he is the first African-American to go through the Tigers organization and actually make the Tigers and make his debut in April in '61. He never played in the minors neither. So you have something in common with him not playing in the minors. You never played a game in the minors, and he only played a little bit in the minors through the system, and then he came up to the Tigers. So you two have that somewhat, something in common there. He was Al Kaline's teammate in '61, played 162 games that year, Jim, and led the league in the American League in triples. And then your stellar first season, and I think it was really stellar since you never pitched a game in the minors. Tell me about that, because you went 18-11 for the Angels, even though you finished last in the AL West at a 500 record, which tells me the division was as tough as can be. You posted the 4th lowest ERA, 2.89, and you pitched a whopping 243 innings, which today these pitchers' arms would fall off. Tell me about that, your first season with the Angels, and what it was like to go from Michigan all the way to Anaheim, California.
It was pretty insane, to be honest with you. I fully anticipated starting the year in Double-A, which was the plan, and it was very clearly articulated to me when I got to spring training that was what's going to happen. But I pitched well, and you might remember an old Tiger, Dan Petrie, was on our team that year, and Peaches was a wonderful guy and a great mentor. And Dan unfortunately got hurt in the spring, and so there was an opening in the rotation, and that's how I ended up making the team, because of an injury to Dan. I look back at it, and Flint, it's a good sports town, great sports town, but maybe not the biggest baseball hotbed around that you can imagine. And going to Michigan, I remember looking around at all these great recruits and these pitchers, and doing the numbers and hoping to make this the spring trip down to Florida. And I felt like maybe I was an end of the roster guy. And 3 years later, I was in the major leagues. So it was amazing. And, I think, for anybody out there who might be feeling a little down sometimes, or you might feel like the odds are stacked against you, I truly believe that there is so much more that is possible in the world than you can imagine. There's just so many examples of that from my career, doors that opened unexpectedly, and improbably, and making the major league team that year is one of those examples.
Well, I'll tell you what, here's a note for you. Yesterday was the 31st anniversary of your major league debut.
That hurts.
Hey, I'm older than you by a few years, so I got a few on you. And you know what? In '91, you finished in the top 3 in the AL Cy Young race. I mean, that was quite an accomplishment too.
Yes, it was. That was my best year. Well, the next year might have been better. I pitched pretty well that next year too, but it was great. I mean, I always wanted to be good, Todd, and I know that sounds funny to say, but I grew up differently. I grew up missing my right hand. I had to learn to do things differently, and I got a lot of attention, for a long time about how I played, and switching the glove on and off. And so I met some of the best sports writers in America. Some of the Parade magazine and People magazine and Good Morning America, and all these different shows, and I think, and that was great, and that was amazing. But somewhere deep in my heart, I wanted to be good. I wanted my story to be more than just participation. I wanted, if there was going to be somebody out there, a mom or a dad or a little boy or a little girl facing similar circumstances as my own, that was great. And if they took something from my story, I was thrilled about that. But I thought it would have even greater meaning and depth, if they could look at something and believe that they could be just as good as anybody else. So that season, in a lot of ways, validated that hope and dream of mine, and I'll always be forever thankful for it.
Well, let's go ahead and fast forward in your career here. I tell you what, tell me about the no-hitter in Yankee Stadium. Tell me all about it. It was September 4th, 1993. You were in a pennant race against the Indians. I believe you're only 2 games behind that season. What? You pitched for the New York Yankees. You got traded. You're pitching in the house that Ruth built. And what do? You throw a no-hitter, and Gene Michaels was thrilled because I remember seeing him. He's the one that brought you over to New York. What was that like?
Unreal, just it was. I grew up a Tigers fan, like most kids in Michigan, as you know, and
Sure.
So when I put on those pinstripes, I wasn't quite sure about all that, I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, there's a depth and a richness to the experience of playing in New York, and I love that city. I've always loved the city. I've always been very appreciative of how the fans treated me in that city, and then to be traded there. And I didn't have that great of a year that year, but I had that moment, a no-hitter in Yankee Stadium, and going up against a good team, the Cleveland Indians. They had some, Albert Bell and Baerga and Kenny Lofton, and Manny Ramirez had just been called up to that team. So they were good, man. They could hit. And so, Saturday day game, Yankee Stadium, fans, were there. It was kind of raining a little bit. And it just, the momentum started building, and couple balls went my way. I got a couple hard hit balls, turned into double plays, and then boom, that eighth, ninth inning, when you start to really just smell it, you start to feel it. And,
Did the
those last
players stay
six
away
outs
from
are,
you? Did the players stay away from you? Because I didn't mean to interrupt. You said you started to feel it. Did the players stay away from you?
yeah, that superstition definitely kicked in. And oddly, my U of M teammate, Scott Kamenicki, was on that team. And my good friend, left-handed pitcher, great pitcher, Jimmy Key, we sat next to each other a lot of days on the bench. And we were fairly lighthearted that afternoon. But as the innings started to pile up, those guys were talking less and less, and they were moving further and further away from me. And I don't know whoever thought of that strategy. It doesn't really help much. But in some ways that's kind of neat too, though, because alone with your thoughts on the bench, you really immerse yourself in the moment and the excitement and the hopefulness and the strategic thinking that goes into it. And so, time is both speeding up and going as slow as can be at the same time.
Well, then the next season in '94, it was canceled because of the strike in August. You guys were in first place. You could have played, I live here in Atlanta, you could have played the Braves in the World Series. You could have been pitching against Smoltz, Glavine, and company. And wow, well, that would have been crazy. I mean, just think about the possibility there. You're pitching for the pinstripes against that rotation.
That would have been something. I tell you, the strike was one of the most disappointing experiences that a lot of us went through who played in that era. To lose time, your major league career is short, anyway, no matter how long you play, and to lose any amount of time, for a labor stoppage is really disappointing. And we had a good team that year. We were very good. I think we were 6 games up in the American League East. The White Sox also had a very good team. The Montreal Expos were very good that year.
Right, right.
So it would have been pretty interesting to see what happened. We'll never know, but that really was 1994, 93 too. Really was the beginning of the ascendancy of the Yankees. That for the little mini dynasty that they had there for a while, and of course the Braves did too.
That's correct. Let's fast forward to swinging the bat. And to me, in your 10-year career, you finally got the hit when you were a Milwaukee Brewer. Tell me about that.
Hey, the only thing I know about hitting is that it's hard to do. And it's incredibly hard to do against big league pitching. And, I pitched against Greg Maddux one night in Milwaukee. And it was really fun because I was a huge Greg Maddux fan. Even as a fellow major league pitcher, Jimmy Key and I used to sit on the bench in Yankee.
Hello, this call is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please hang up now. The recording has stopped.
And so I got a chance to hit against him, and that was kind of something. And I got up there, and he threw me a fastball right down the middle. And it wasn't very hard. He didn't, overexert himself or anything. And I thought to myself, I can hit that. It goes back to my days at Prince Central. I can swing the bat. So he threw the next pitch, and it looked exactly the same. It came out of his hand in the same exact spot, the same release point. And I see it coming, and I'm ready to just take off and hit this thing. And it was a sinker this time. It wasn't a straight fastball like the first one that he threw. And I missed it. The ball sank about 4 inches, and I missed it by 4 inches. And then he threw me a changeup 0-2, and I swung and missed that by 2 feet. So I did get a couple hits in the big leagues, but I remember that at bat against Greg Maddux, just to show you how difficult it is to hit against major league pitching.
You got a couple of hits and 3 RBIs against the same pitcher for the Chicago Cubs. Do you remember who that was?
I do. John Lieber. Yep. He
Yes.
was. One was in Milwaukee, and the other was in Wrigley Field on day games, which was really fun because Wrigley is just. I love the old time iconic ballparks, going back to our days as kids in Michigan, going to Tiger Stadium, and getting a couple of hits that makes you feel like you're in the game. Makes you feel like you're participating. And I'm proud of that. We won't mention my batting average, but I did get a couple of hits.
You drove in 3 runs. That's all needs to be said.
Well, I think they were pitching around the guys to get to me to surprise them.
I have one surprise before we let you go. I'm going to bring you back in time. You gave me a hint about you hitting the baseball far at Flint Central High School. I have a former teammate of yours on the other line. I want you to say hello to him and see if you can guess who it is.
All right. Well, let's see who it is.
Who is?
Hey, Jim. Did you play for Grant Amity Realty?
I did play for Grant Amity Realty.
Who played first base for you guys?
He played first base. That'll help you.
Is this Brad?
Yeah, it is. It is. I was always wondering what happened to you. I'm glad to hear things worked out okay for you.
Talking about good left-handed hitters, I'm speaking to one right now. Smooth swinging. Brad Ballard, man. Good to talk to you, man.
Yeah, good to hear from you, Jim. That's good, man. Life is good?
Those were the days. Yeah, things are good. Things are good.
Yeah.
Still communicating with some of the boys back there from our Flint Central days. And how are you doing? Life treating you well?
Yeah, doing well down here in Florida. And, we're holed up in the house right now, but, can't complain. Got our health, and that's important. So we'll take it.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what,
great to hear from you.
I was going to say, Jim used to hit the ball. Brad used to tell me. What did you tell me on the Brad on the phone? They used to hit it off some deck.
Hit it off the field house, right?
I did. I mean, it's hard to describe the dimensions of our Flint Central home field.
Yeah.
Left hitters were at a severe disadvantage. Let's just put it that way. Unless you could go the other way, it was very much like Fenway Park, exactly. We had a big left field wall out there, and I hit a ball off Kersley. Yeah, that went over the right field fence. I still can't believe it went that far.
Yeah,
but
that was a mile.
That was fun. Playing for Coach Hollick. And, we had some good times back then.
It was fun. People don't realize it, but Flint actually was a very good place to grow up. You could, I haven't been back there in probably 5 years or so, and it's like. And I had been gone probably 10 years, and it's like, holy smokes. It's very sad, but it used to be a great place for sure.
Good people,
Brad,
good
thank
coaches.
You. I'm sorry, Jim. Go ahead. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to agree with Brad. It's just, it was a good place to grow up. It's, there's good people there, good coaches, and always had time for you. Always.
Yep.
There was time and space back then to. They were patient, and it made all the difference.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I just wanted to chime in here, and Jim, you take care. Todd, nice talking to you. And,
hey, nice talking to you, pal. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep.
All right. So good hearing from you, man.
Your former high school
care.
teammate. I wanted to surprise you.
That was a surprise, and Brad was a very good hitter, and we had some good times together. That's for sure.
Well, if you didn't get it, I would have felt awful, but I knew you were going to get it. Brad told me, he said, hey, I was heavier back then. Tell him about my physique. He definitely would have remembered me then.
Well, it was funny because Brad was he mentioned a little league team that we played on, and more than that. And so there were a few years where we all played on that same team. So it kind of stumped me at first, like we had we had some guys who played all the years, some guys who didn't. Anyway, Brad was great, and those years in Flint were great, and pretty cool to reconnect.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on. You do have a great book that's called Imperfect Life. Jim Abbott and Tim Brown. There's a picture of you on there with your no-hitter, putting your arms out. I want everyone to go read it. It's an excellent read. So just wanted to go ahead.
Thanks, Todd.
For you. Yeah, sure.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome
What's
back
that?
on the show anytime. I really appreciate it. And good luck to you out in California, and stay safe.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Todd. Fun joining you. Thanks for bringing back some good memories, and you stay safe down there in Atlanta.
You too. That was Jim Abbott, former Major League Baseball player who did it without a right hand. And I just thank you so much, Jim, for coming on the show. And I want to thank all our listeners. And I want to thank one of my best friends growing up, Brad Ballard from Flint, Michigan originally, calling into the show. I really appreciate that. I want to thank you, Breck, back in San Francisco running the board. And thanks everyone for listening. And good evening, everyone, and stay safe out there. And we'll talk to you next week on ATL Prime Sports.